This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. Hello and welcome to this week's episode, where my guest is Kumud Gandhi. Kumud is a food scientist, author and founder of the Cooking Academy. She's written a book called The Garlic Story, a look at the history of garlic and its culinary uses. We talk about how garlic has been celebrated and feared throughout history, the different types and uses, and how you can incorporate more of it into your life.
So my background is that I'm Indian. My parents were from India. I was born here, but I made lots of trips back to India because we have a family business and family there. So our holidays, our big school holidays were always in India. My dad was a great kind of grower, and so he liked to grow things, and we used to grow our own garlic. And we used to grow both green garlic, and that was my special time with my dad. So I always used to go into the garden with him, and that's where I've got my love of gardening. So my two passions in life are cooking and gardening. So growing garlic was something that we did, and I did with my dad, and that was our kind of time together. My background is that at the time when I studied, I didn't know or understand or really realize that I wanted to have a career in food, just that I was really interested in cooking and food and enjoyed eating it. So I initially went into economics. I studied economics at the London School of Economics, and then I went on to work for the Bank of England for just over 13 years. And I had a career in banking. The only thing that would help me to come down from the high of work was really cooking. You know, even my train journey home couldn't disconnect me from work. But when I got into the kitchen and I was thinking about what I was going to make for dinner, then I was in my own world. And so my joy of cooking in adult life came from there. I had a very fast track career at the bank, and it was a very full on career, and it was very dominating. It really grabbed my life for those 13 years, and it was all consuming to the point where, you know, at the end of that 13 years, I kind of felt like I was almost at the point of nervous exhaustion, trying to be all things to all people and kind of have some level of family life. And that's when I took a career break. And after a couple of years, I retrained in food science, and I studied food science at the London Food Centre in London at what was then Elephant and Castle University, which is now South Bank. And then I went on to do a master's in functional nutrition, simply because I had become so totally disconnected with nourishing myself when I was working that although I cooked when I could, you know, even that was quite distant from the family life I had had as a young child, where I completely understood everything about nutrition just from a family point of view, because we followed a system of Ayurveda, which is where you look at your kind of body chemistry and eat based on how to get the best out of food. And also my family history. So my mother's side of the family are 4 generations of chemists. So we had a really good understanding of food, and it was always taught to us in a very integral way. So it wasn't like we were learning something. It was absolutely, oh, well, make sure you add this because this will be good for this. So I'd grown up understanding that. And yet during my career, I'd been completely disconnected from it because of lack of time. So that's my background. When I graduated food science, that is, I started off by teaching human nutrition at the University of Westminster. And then I quickly understood that actually I didn't want to be stood in a great lecture hall talking about nutrition. I wanted to teach people how to use food to their betterment and how to use it in a very integral way in their lives. And so I started the Cooking Academy. And that's when I really started to be able to work with food in the way that I wanted to. I first of all started off by specializing in spices because I particularly understood spices. And I wanted to show other people how you could use spices to benefit your health. So in other words, start looking at spices as little bits of medicine rather than flavor. And I feel like we've somewhat put the cart before the horse. We've talked about food in terms of flavour, and I like the flavour of this and therefore I'll eat it, instead of thinking about what food brings to us and how it's going to work with our body, and that we should use it for its medicinal and nutritional benefits rather than because you like the flavour of it. So that's how the Cooking Academy was born.
Bringing it back to the garlic, apparently there may be some people who don't like it, and I find that very, very difficult to believe. But, I think maybe it has historically had a bad rap. Do you know why, that could have been? Is it something to do with the preparation or the way that people have used it?
So there's a few things. So in certain cultures, it has a reputation for being associated with wizardry or vampires and things, which is really just mythical. And it has a very, very strong smell, which some people don't like. It has I think, almost foreignness about it, because it seems like we haven't used it. But actually, garlic has been on our shores for many, many hundreds of years. And I don't think that we are as foreign to garlic as we believe we are. So I realize that some people don't like it. For other people, it's a religious thing. So it's considered to inflame the passions. It's considered to make you more angry or aggressive or hot-tempered. So in certain sections, or the more devout sections of the Hindu faith from which I belong to, it's considered to be a food that we shouldn't eat because it could make us inflamed, as I say. But I've never thought that. I've kind of just thought, well, you can be who you want to be. It's about what you are, and, it's about your values. If you are just angry, then that's what you are. But I know plenty of people that don't eat garlic and are still very angry. So I kind of thought, well, it doesn't really make sense. And it's an ingredient that I can't cook without. It brings so much to the plate, both in terms of its nutritional profile and benefit, as well as flavour. So the two things go hand in hand to me. Food has to be nourishing, but also we have to learn how to make it taste great and get the best out of it. And I think nothing brings more warmth and just home and comfort than food with garlic in it.
And also, you mentioned the sort of health benefits of food. How good is garlic really for our health?
So the more uncooked it is, the better. The more gently it's cooked, the better. It's very good for our gut. It's very good for our gut microbiome. It's very good from a cardiovascular health benefit because it has heat properties, and those heat properties prevent the fatty deposits sitting on our arteries. And it's very good for your immune system and antibiotic properties. So it has several elements in it that I think are very good. And the fact that it aids your digestion is really very key. And it has a cleansing impact in the gut is very important. So yes, it has many benefits. As I say, the more raw you eat it, the better. My osteopath used to tell me that he used to have garlic sandwiches where he used to slice it super thinly and then put it in a sandwich. If he'd had a clinic full of very coldy, germ-infested people to ward off the bugs, and that's exactly, why it is good for your immune system, because it's full of good bacteria. And pickled garlic is also very good. I love having it in a pickle sense. So for me, just, mashing it up and adding a little bit of salt and pepper is also a fabulous way of taking it in, if it's absolutely for medicinal purposes, as a bit of a shot. But otherwise, just gently roasting garlic, sautéing it in oil, is my perfect way. So a garlic confit is my perfect way of enjoying garlic.
There are obviously a lot of different ways of consuming it, but kind of going back to actually growing it, obviously we're very familiar with the bulb, but there are other types of garlic, aren't there, and other ways of using it?
So I use, and in fact, we had our first spring garlic kind of grown indoors to have the early forced, if you like, spring garlic. And I put that in with some baby potatoes, and it was absolutely delicious. So I use it a lot as a spring onion. So like a spring onion, but I replace the spring onion for the garlic, and it just grows. So you force it out of the clove and then it grows like a spring onion, and then you cut it back, and then it will just continue to grow again and again if it has some good soil. So all throughout the summer, from March onwards, I will probably enjoy spring garlic up until about September, October, depending on the weather. So I eat it like that. Then in the late March through till early May season, I would have it as wild garlic, and I would forage for it. I have some in my garden now, so I don't have to forage too far. But going foraging for it is fun. And then I would chop it up into salads, but also add it into a quiche, or again, almost eat it like a spinach dish. I would remove the stem. The spine can be a little bit, not coarse, but just a little bit more difficult to break down. So I would just trim that out and then use them almost like spinach leaves. And it's delicious. And because it's such a small window of being in season, it's like you kind of make the most of that time of enjoying it whilst you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's so versatile. And also, one of the things I didn't realise was the different ways it's used in different cuisines. And you break that down into sections in the book. And I wondered if you could maybe touch on, obviously I don't want to give too much away, but is there a particular style that you're most happy to use, or that most ticks boxes for you in terms of how you like to consume it? And if so, is there a particular recipe from that cuisine that you would recommend?
So it sounds like the most bizarre way or in your face way of consuming garlic, but in the book there is this fantastic recipe which is garlic soup, and you essentially roast the garlic bulbs in the oven with a little bit of olive oil, and then you pop those out when the garlic is roasted, and then you blend it with some creme fraiche and all the other seasonings and some stock, vegetable stock, and it is delicious. Now, you would imagine that it would be almost very garlicky in the mouth, but it isn't. And dunked with some sourdough bread, some crusty bread, some toasty bread, it is just delicious. And when we launched the book, on the book launch, we made some various canapes from the book. And the garlic soup was the most popular of all of the dishes. And everybody was kind of, wow, I'm going to make this. I can't believe that something so unusual, can taste so delicious. So the garlic soup recipe, when the garlic is roasted, is a beautiful way of cooking it. I also like it in a very subtle way by slicing it very, very finely and then gently sauteing it in some olive oil, and then removing the garlic when they're just nice kind of leaves of goldenness, putting them to one side, and then actually, frying off some spaghetti or something in the oil and adding some butter to it, and then adding some pesto to it. And then you get this amazing garlic flavor, which is so subtle. And then, you get this wonderful subtle flavor without actually having any garlic in it. But it's the perfume, it's the infusion from the gently sauteed garlic that you're getting this flavor. So that's another great way. Black garlic, which is just garlic that has been fermented, has this amazing, almost chewy like taste. And again, incredibly subtle. And I make a pasta dish, farfadella pasta, in a light cream sauce with some black garlic. And that again is just really a very delicious way of eating pasta. That's almost like a delicacy, as you would with perhaps truffle mushrooms, for instance. So there are some really exciting ways in which you can cook with various types of garlic that can really open up your repertoire of recipes, and they can make ordinary food seem so extraordinary and can really just lift the dish entirely.
The other thing that fascinated me was the thought of using it not just in savoury dishes. Can you use it in a sweet dish?
Yes, absolutely. So you can make sweet jams with garlic. You can make ice cream with garlic, and you can make even like a cheesecake with garlic. And again, this is all about how you cook with it. And so I visited the garlic farm on numerous occasions, and it's always amazing how, they sell various recipes with garlic as a sweet rather than a savory. But I think for me, a garlic jam is the most incredibly exciting way to cook with it. And the ice cream as well, it's an unbelievable flavor, and it's so sweet, not sickly sweet, but you get this wonderful delicate sweetness that comes from the garlic, which is delicious.
As I said, I love anything garlic related. So I think people just need to get the book, honestly, because it's fantastic. And, there's so many good recipes in there. Is there anything that you would like to say to somebody who's a bit reticent or a bit scared of using garlic?
Yes. Start off by looking at the more delicate recipes and the European ways of cooking, particularly the Italian way of using garlic is super delicate. And I would say go with that first to just introduce yourself to it. And don't be afraid of eating garlic. Good oral hygiene is amazing. And the other thing is that if you use it very subtly by sautéing it, you definitely don't get this aftertaste, which is most important. So it's about digestion. So if you digest it well, then you don't get that aftertaste. And I would say if you serve it to someone who you're close to, then you don't have to worry about garlic because they've eaten it too. So if you're afraid of doing that, then you don't deserve to eat garlic.
And actually, that has reminded me of one more thing that I picked up in the book, which is something that I quite often do, which is to leave it more in larger chunks rather than crushing the life out of it. And I thought that was quite interesting as well, what you said about that, about how you actually cut it into pieces.
Yes, and it just cooks so delicately, and then you can eat it, and you don't even get that really strong garlicky flavor. I love purple garlic as well for that reason, those great big purple garlics, and they are beautiful because they are big cloves, but they are very subtle and delicate. So I love those. But as you say, if you just roughly cut it and then just saute it or cook it out in a recipe, then you don't even realize you're eating garlic. You could bite into it like a vegetable because it is a vegetable. So, you could bite into it and not realize that you're getting a mouthful of garlic. So yes, there are many subtle ways of enjoying it. I would say perhaps some of the Asian dishes are the most in your face, but they are nevertheless very delicious. And I suppose it all depends on your starting position. But even if you only had wild garlic or green garlic, that's a very delicious way of eating it as well. And looks gorgeous in recipes. It really lifts the colour profile of the dishes as well.
Thank you very much to Kumud for taking part in this interview, and thank you for listening. 19th of April is National Garlic Day as well, so look out for more upcoming celebrations of this amazing plant. If you like this interview, I recommend checking out episode 259 with Kevin Hobbs and Artur Cesar-Erlach, where we talk about unusual edible plants from around the world. That episode was released on the 16th of October last year. You might also like episode 157, Climate Cuisine, with Clarissa Way, which was released on the 4th of May 2022. You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.